Welcome. Welcome to Worldviews. You guys can all come down, get seated. We got some seats up here in the front. My name is Dinah Kerzner. I am a third-year engineering student here on campus, and I will be your moderator tonight. I know you guys all came here to listen to these panelists answer your questions, but I want to start with by asking you a question. Why did you guys come here tonight? What made you, I know maybe some people force you here, drag you in here. Maybe you have no idea why you're here. You came for the food. But I think there's a deeper meaning why you guys came here tonight. You guys all have questions, I believe, about deeper things that you learn in your math class, your psych class, things about purpose, meaning, good and evil, morality, suffering. Things that are not so easy to answer. Tonight, we will be addressing those through these lovely speakers here. Tonight's event is brought to you by some great clubs here on campus. The Skeptics Club. Is there any of you guys out here? Skeptics Club, the Muslim Students Association, the Sikh Students Association, Power to Change, Wellspring Christian Fellowship, the Jewish groups here on campus, and we got Engineers Without Borders in the back serving us coffee and tea. Make sure you guys go get that after the event. We'd also like to advise you that Shaw Media, as you guys can see, Shaw TV will be here tonight filming the event, and we also have other media sources that will be taking pictures. Tonight's event is, we're here to represent a wide variety of worldviews. However, it would be impractical to try and represent all the different views here on campus. We are not trying to actually exclude or any views here on campus from this event. It's not meant to be an all-encompassing event, but merely a look at 5 different worldviews. We plan to do more events like this in the future, hopefully with new speakers and different representatives. We'd also like to tell you that there may be some discrepancies. We all know that there's discrepancies between certain groups in each worldview. There are different trains of thought and methodologies of answering the same question. It would be unfair to assume that each speaker would answer tonight's question the exact same way another would from the same worldview. Each speaker will give their own stance on the questions and not necessarily the same response as others would in the same worldview. I'd now like to open the floor to the speakers. We're going to give a short 5-minute introductions. Each speaker will just give a little background about themselves, why they're here, and where they kind of brought up. Can we start with you?
For sure. My name's Naveed Aziz. I was born in Montreal, Quebec. And in terms of my background, I represent the Sunni Muslim community. Now, the reason why I actually came here was over the past couple of years, a lot of things have happened, and the image of Islam has been portrayed in the media, for the most part, in a very negative limelight. So as a member of the community, I'm trying to do whatever I can to represent what I believe the true version of Islam actually is. Now, in terms of my academic background, I don't have a multiple or a plethora of letters after my names in terms of B's and PhDs and all that stuff. But I do have a religious background where I dedicated 7 years of my life to learning the Arabic language and to memorizing the holy book of Muslims known as the Quran, and as well as the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. So I did dedicate 7 years of my life doing that. In terms of my secular background, it is in commerce and in social sciences. Now, what I would like to leave the audience here with today is, regardless of the multiple worldviews you will hear, I think one thing that we should all be able to agree upon as Canadians is we should appreciate our diversity. And what makes us strong as Canadians is the appreciation of our diversity, and that we don't have to agree with one another, but we will mutually love one another, respect one another, and care for one another. And regardless of our worldviews, if we were to see anyone in danger, we would stand up to protect them. And if we ever saw someone in help, we would be there to help them. So that's just a small introduction in terms of where I'm coming from and what I would like you to hear throughout the evening. They allotted 5 minutes, but as an introduction, 5 minutes speaking about myself didn't seem right. So I was like, it wouldn't be very humble and it wouldn't be filled with humility. And that's like the type of message I would like to portray. So I'm not going to use up my whole 5 minutes, and I'm actually going to pass it on to the next speaker.
My name is John Vickery. I am a lecturer here in the Department of English, Critical Studies at UBC Okanagan. I'm also an Anglican priest here in Kelowna at Christ Church, and so I bridge the two worlds, I suppose, with one foot in the church as a priest and one foot in the university as a lecturer. I did my undergraduate work in English. I did my graduate work in theology in Toronto, and then I went on to the University of Toronto, where I obtained my doctorate of theology, specializing in the Reformation, Protestant theology. And so here I am, a doctor of theology teaching English, which is proof enough, in my opinion, that God has a sense of humor. Why am I here? Well, I was asked, and so I complied. I do think I have UBC Okanagan is distinct, I suppose, in Canada as being one of the few major research universities that doesn't have a department of religion. Neither does it have a department of theology. And in the origins of the Western university, at least, theology was a very, very important part of the intellectual tradition. And I still think it is a very important part, that we do think honestly and generously about our theological past. And I'm of the opinion that theological reflection, theological study has much to give us. And so in a university that doesn't think an awful lot about these things, I hope to be able to help that discussion and further it along. And that's it for me.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm from New Zealand, so my name's Dr. Andrew Veal. It sounds weird to say doctor, but anyway, I'm from New Zealand, and I'm here to represent atheism. And that's mainly because both I was asked, and also because there have been a number of modern atheists who are quite rabid and not necessarily very understanding of religious views. I was raised by atheist parents, and I think I'm a third or fourth generation atheist, which is relatively rare in the world. But New Zealand is a moderately secular society, and in school I had Bible classes and things to an extent. But as I went on, I questioned a lot more. I eventually got a master's and a PhD in genetics and genomics in evolutionary biology. I also did a BA in English and philosophy, where I particularly looked at philosophy of religion, philosophy of science, and I've gone into postgraduate study in both of those. And basically, I've spent my life in a university thinking about stuff. So hopefully that comes across tonight, and I present something that's slightly less extreme from an atheist.
Good evening, guys. My name is Saj Thin, actually. I'm a biochemistry student, fourth year biochemistry student here at university, and easily the youngest one sitting here. I'll be representing Sikhism here. Thank you. It's hard to tell. Anyways, I'll be representing Sikhism. We are a minority, a very visible minority here in Canada as well. I am a first-generation Canadian. My parents emigrated here in 1990, and I was born on Eastern Canada. My parents drove across Canada when I was really young, maybe 2-3 months, all the way, and I was raised in Vancouver. So Sikhism, you might be wondering why a young kid without a beard or any hair or a turban is speaking about Sikhism. But 20 years ago, it was a thought by my parents that Canada was not a place that it is today. So they took a choice against their own religion, cut their hair, cut my hair, and became one of the people around here, became part of the melting pot. And that affected how my parents are perceived in the environment. They couldn't get a job before, and they could get a job after, whether it be menial or not. And for me, as a guy who's grown up being taught the ethics about Sikhism, what empathy is, what knowing why you should fight for people who have nothing to fight for, why you should talk about equality, try to fight for equality and all that, even though you just see it everywhere, people talk about it, but they don't actually live it. But one day I hope to stand up to the point where I can grow the beard, grow the hair, and wear the uniform that is Sikhism, right? For me, I've grown to the point too, I realized that one day I might be able to stand at the point where people have the beards and the turbans, which is a uniform. It's not like if you have a priest and someone's wearing a collar or not. It is a uniform that someone has to stand out in their society, stand for the rights of other people. I see myself, I'm working on it. Every day I wake up in the morning, I believe that I'll be helping someone's life today. If I had to die for someone, I'd die today. If someone were to someone that didn't know on the streets and they were in trouble, I would be able to put my life in danger for them. And that's what I believe Sikhism is. And I believe with the help of the local temple as well, I went over the questions with them, and they believed that I knew what I was talking about. I'm also the president of the Sikh Students Association here. I kind of ignored that, I think. And the founder as well. And I was raised doing prayers, raised by my parents, raised by my grandparents, and my whole family was really large, about 14 people at one point in a 4-bedroom house. And so we got real close, and I really understood what it meant to be a Sikh in this community, what it meant to stand out in this community. And now look at Canada. As just read recently, Punjabi has been considered the third official language of Canada, with 20 parliamentary members who are actually Punjabi speakers from around the community. And that's a big change from 20 years ago. 20 years ago, someone with a turban could not get a job at frying burgers at all. And now, 20 years later, we got parliamentary members. I'd like to pass it on. That's last point. Thank you.
Yep. My name is Dinah Kerzner. My alter ego here is Susan Shawlee. We're here representing the Jewish community. Susan's a university graduate, and she's self-taught. She's done a lot of reading. She's done a lot of lecturing on Judaism. I graduated from a Jewish teacher seminary, and then I taught for about 20 years, and in the meantime, I was taking courses constantly because I really love being Jewish, and I love all the things that I learned. One day, after about 20 years, I was called by the United States, somebody from Oregon, and asked if I would come and open a school and administer it. And I went down, and I was there for 8 years, loved it. And then came the time for me to retire, and I came back here, and that's why I'm here. And that's about it.
Great. Let's give these guys a round of applause for being here tonight. Awesome. So now you guys are probably wondering, what are these questions that these lovely panelists will be answering tonight? So over the past few months, a couple of the clubs, we went around campus and we asked the question, if you could stand in front of a panelist of leaders knowledgeable in atheism, Sikhism, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, what would you ask? So very, very open-ended, very broad. It was very interesting going around talking to all you. Thank you. Some of you I know submitted your questions to the survey. We actually ended up surveying around 100 to 200 people. We ended up getting around 300 questions. So it was very interesting going over going through the data, trying to figure out what question was, which were the top 5. Before we get into these top 5, we were just gonna go into some honorable questions. What would it take for you to convert to a different religion? So that would have been very interesting, I think, asking these panelists. This one was very popular. It was almost a top 5. I think it was 6 or 7. Who is Jesus? What was the most fulfilling, peaceful moment in your life? A little bit more mellow, a little bit more chill. It would have been very interesting to go over that too. And this last one, very interesting. What do you know about Baha'i? So a couple ground rules before we get into these questions. All the panelists up on the table here will have a maximum of 3 minutes per question, which is very daunting. These questions are not very easy to answer in 3 minutes, let alone a day, an hour. We could be here all year if we were really going to get deep into these questions. As for you, the audience, we will not be having Q&A at this moment. We'll postpone that to the end of the event. So get your questions ready. We'll have a formal Q&A, and then afterwards you can also talk to some of the speakers. If they're willing to stick around, you are free to bring your questions to them. All right. So what is the fifth most asked question by students here at UBCO? The fifth most asked question: what are morals, and what do they mean to you? Below are some example questions that students actually asked. Is there a moral standard? Is there hope if this standard is not upheld? Is it important to challenge rules set by religion in order to clarify these rules are worth following? Should we embrace the moral concepts or follow their exact rules? Sheikh, if we start with you, that's okay.
Fantastic. So again, just for the timing, is there going to be a notification?
I will let you know if you have 15 seconds left, so
Then
you
you'll
can
let me
kind of
know.
wrap up your final thoughts.
Okay, fantastic. The time's begun. So what do morals mean to me? Morals are a way of conducting life. It is a way of deciphering what would constitute a good decision from a bad decision. It is an internal compass that guides you towards a path of pleasure or towards a path of pain, a path of self-satisfaction or a path of regret. So morals, for the most part, I believe, are almost like a compass. They tell you which direction you're heading in life. Now, is there a moral standard? I believe definitely, from two aspects from the Muslim faith. There's a standard that God has revealed in the Quran, which is, do this and don't do that. And the Quran is pretty explicit about what should be done and what shouldn't be done. But beyond that, I believe there's a universal moral standard where regardless of what faith we follow, we will all have certain tenets that we will abide by and try to uphold, such as murder being wrong and lying being wrong and stealing being wrong. And I believe internally we were born with these. No one had to teach us them. We knew it from the very get-go that these things are wrong and they should not be done. Is it important to challenge rules set by religion? I would like to clarify the question, and that is, there's two aspects to religion. Regardless of what faith one follows, there's what they believe God revealed, and then there's what man interpreted that revelation to mean. In terms of questioning God himself, I do not believe that should be done. God is the ultimate authority and should not be questioned. Whereas the interpretations of man are definitely open to questioning, and they should be rigorously questioned, because as a representative of God, they need to make sure that they're doing their utmost due diligence to fairly represent God and to say what God actually wants, rather than their own words and have their own personal agendas subsided. And the last point of it, should we embrace the moral concepts or follow the exact rules? I don't think this question should be an or question. It should be an and question, that moral concepts should be followed, and in certain situations, their exact rules need to be followed as well. There is a place and time where exact rules can be subsided and ignored for following the greater purpose, which we would call the spirit of the law. But there's definitely a reason why God revealed a letter as well. And that is, for the most part, the letter should be followed. And in very few instances, the letter can be ignored to follow the spirit of the law. And I hope I've done that justice in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, I'd just like to say that you're very sneaky in putting 3 questions beneath the one question. So in fact, we have 4 questions. And so I'm going to remain true to the letter of the law, and I'm going to answer the question that I was supposed to answer. Brevity is the soul of wit, said Polonius, so I will be brief. Christians understand morality in terms of the great summation that Jesus gave with respect to the 2 tables of the Mosaic Law. For Christians, to be moral is, number 1, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second commandment is very similar, the Lord says. It's to love your neighbor as yourself. This is how we understand morality. This is the gist of it. This is the essence of it. It's the nut. It's the most important part. And so we strive to do that. An important element of the 2 tables, when I speak of 2 tables, many of you don't know what this means. This is the 10 Commandments, the first really 4, and then the latter 6. We believe that the first table refers to our duty to God, and the second table refers to our duty to man. Or to humanity, I should say. I'm sorry. One of the great theologians of the past, Martin Luther, had a doctrine called First Commandment righteousness, which meant that if we are not able to keep the first commandment, which is to have no other gods besides the Lord, thou shalt have no other gods before me, then we are in fact unable to keep the rest of the commandments. And any keeping of the remaining commandments, including not lying, not stealing, not coveting, etc., if we are not able to keep that first commandment, then the rest of our obedience is simply idolatry. Because the point of all the rest of those commandments, especially our love for our neighbor, the point of me loving this man is that I might glorify and exalt and love God, that through loving him, I honor the Lord. That's how Christians understand morality. Everything that we do in our kindness, in our graciousness, in our love, in our service to our neighbor is because we love God more than anything else. I must love God more than I love him. Because I love God, I must and I will love this gentleman next to me. That's the essence of Christianity and moralism. Thank you.
So, I mean, I agree that morals are a guiding principle for life. However, I think that morality actually goes a lot beyond humans. There's actually very good evidence for morality in many other animals. Vampire bats are actually moral creatures. They've done many studies with chimpanzees and crows and parrots, generally the more intelligent animals. And they have morality. They have guidelines on what is fair and unfair. When you give more to one animal in the cage than the other, they feel that it is unfair. And in some animals, they will not accept the unfair deal even when they are getting the better deal out of that. Morality is something that is evolved through many creatures. Within studies in humans, morality has been shown so that there are certain virtues, and some people are virtue ethicists who believe that that's how morality works in terms of virtues. The virtues that people have found are across all cultures. So there is very good evidence that we have an inbuilt morality of what the good life is, what a good human is, and that transcends religion. But I don't think that that means, since it's in everything, that it was given to us by God. I think it was evolved. There's a very good book by Elliot Sobers called Unto Others, which talks about the evolution of altruism, how you can evolve to be kind. And I strongly recommend people read this book. It's very interesting. We have general virtues about what it means to be a good person. Generally, this is about doing good things to others, being humble, being kind. But I think that that there are cultural aspects to it. So we're informed by our culture about what is good and bad. Wild children that have been brought up by animals do not have the same values as us. And I do think that morality isn't given in textbooks from the holy texts. If you actually read the holy text, there's many things that you would go, I don't agree with, that are in them. And largely what we've done is we've taken the bits that we like and ignored the bits that we don't like from those. Such as, let's see, Matthew 8:32, when Jesus sent devils into pigs to make them jump off a cliff and die. That doesn't seem like a righteous thing to do. I'm sorry that I know more about Christianity than others.
Only a little bit more time.
Okay, yeah, so anyway, morality is something that we all have, but I don't think that it is given to us in texts. It is definitely partially culturally informed on top of that.
All right, so for myself, the question says, what are morals and what do they mean to you? So what do they mean to me? As a Sikh person, or as any person that is in this community that we live in, I always consider myself a man of my actions. It's not depending on how I feel when I act, it's what I'm doing. At the end of the day, that's what matters. When I do a good thing, when I help someone who has no food, I give them something to eat, which is part of Sikhism, that what is langar. we give some food to someone who has nothing to eat, and that makes me feel good. Whatever the feeling is, I continue it. I see someone who's getting beat up by someone who's much larger than them, and then I can step in the way to protect them. I believe that is a moral stepping. There's a stepping stone. There's a way for yourself to get in the way of others, to make yourself better. Because we can always have semetics about there's a difference between you and me. You might be stronger than I am. You might look a certain way. But in humanity, for us, or for me as well, we're all equal, whether we're man or woman, gay or straight, black or white. We are all equal, and to hold that mentality is what I consider to be moral. To consider each of us to be equal, and that's a difficult thing to do. Difficult thing to fight for someone. Difficult thing to put yourself in someone's shoes. Difficult thing to feel empathy. That's Sikhism. We would try to fight for those rights. We would fight for people who can't protect themselves, and we consider ourselves to be saints first before we consider ourselves soldiers. So empathy, what you need to do, you need to feel empathy before you can protect someone. You need to feel empathy before you can give something. You need to feel empathy before you can take something. You need to feel on both sides of the coin. That's what I consider to be moral, what I consider to be right, what is the truth. And in Sikhism, we try to find the truth. We try to learn the truth. And what is the truth is that we being equal, we being the same, we fighting together for something that's right is more powerful than me fighting for something that I want more than you. Greed and all this other stuff. This stuff can seep into your soul, whatever it is. But it's easier to fight for these things, fight for someone else who has nothing to fight for. I hope that answered the question, I guess.
Would you like me to try the three parts of the first question, or just the first part?
Whatever you like, you could just answer the main topic question, or
Go for all of them?
come in anywhere you like.
All right. To me, the moral standard depends on how we treat others and how we expect them to behave toward us. A famous Jewish scholar and sage named Rabbi Hillel put it most clearly and succinctly when he was approached by a curious pagan who demanded to know all about Judaism while standing on one foot. Hillel responded as follows: "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. All the rest is commentary. Now go and study." This same moral standard is the basis of the Golden Rule, Martin Buber's I and thou on categorical imperative. Is there a result of this if this moral standard is not upheld? Of course there's a consequence if moral standards are not upheld. This is very akin to the rule of law. In fact, most rules of law are essential to both communal living and to religion, which are closely interwoven. If you adhere to the moral code, you're allowed to live and interact within your group. If not, you will be ostracized by your community. Is there hope if this standard is not upheld? To use a well-known and possibly trite phrase, hope springs eternal, because we believe that man can be redeemed. In Judaism, we've been told that we each have two pockets. In one is the note that says, "I am but dust and ashes." And in the other pocket is a message that the world was created for me. From time to time, we must reach into one pocket or the other. The secret of living comes from knowing when to reach into each. If we live according to our moral standard, it's just like watching a glorious sunset. We feel comfortably sure that the world was created for us. When the standard is not upheld, we're reminded that we're alone as dust and ashes. Consequently, if we wish to live successfully in any community, we must abide according to the accepted moral standard, because in the end, it'll affect the way we feel about ourselves.
Great. Wow. Nice job on the time. You ladies and gentlemen did a very good job. It's not easy. Our next question coming up. Fourth most asked question. Can you know that your belief is true? This, I believe, is one of the most difficult questions we have here tonight. It's a shame we only have 3 minutes per speaker. We wish we could go all night, but if you guys could do your best, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Floor is yours.
So the fortunate thing about this panel was they actually gave us the questions in advance, so you had an opportunity to prepare. And even though I tried my best to summarize something within 3 minutes, I was like, there's no way I can do justice to this question. So rather than giving an objective response, representing the Muslim faith, I want to give a more human response in terms of what this question actually means to me. That how can we know how can you know when your belief is the truth? And for myself, when I was researching, which religion to follow, even though I was born in a Muslim family, it was a journey for me to figure out what religion I actually wanted to follow, because that option to follow any religion I wanted was there. So for me, it came down to 3 fundamental components. Number 1, the religion had to make logical sense to me, meaning anything that I read from the sources of legislation itself had to make sense. There couldn't be open and clear contradictions. Number 2 is that it had to be spiritually enlightening, meaning that I'd have to feel good about myself after I've done what the religion requires. I'd have to feel serene. I'd have to feel tranquil. I'd have to feel closer to God himself after doing what the religion commands of me. And then number 3, it would have to be filled with good deeds, meaning that there should be clear guidelines in terms of what are the things that we can do to actually earn good deeds and to earn reward and to get closer to God. Now, after these 3 components of, I guess if you want to call it a criterion of finding a religion, the 4th thing that I looked for, and it's not a separate entity on itself, is that it should be easily palatable, easily acceptable by layman and scholar. And I believe for me, this was the deciding factor, that when I researched various religions and I came across Islam and I studied Islam in detail, this is what I found, that it was logically sound, it was spiritually enlightening, and there was a clear guideline in terms of what good deeds actually looked like for me to get closer to God. And then lastly, could this be understood by a layman? Definitely. Can it be made more complex and presented to a scholar and have academic discussions about? For sure, without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you.
I think for the Christian, a genuine response to this question has to be something akin, although the analogy isn't perfect. The response has to be something akin to the man of sight saying to the blind man who's asked him, how do you know what you're seeing is sight? In most cases, the man with sight would say, because I see it. Christianity teaches very clearly that without a donation of a faculty, a new faculty or a new sense, which is called faith, we are utterly unable to see God. The best theologians have described the human condition as such that through some primal incident, we obtained a desperate wound, which Thomas Aquinas calls the loss of original righteousness, by which we are no longer able to fix our eyes and our reason on the chief good or the summum bonum. Reason has lost its way. It no longer understands what its chief good is, which is meant to be God. And so it makes its chief end all kinds of other things, most often itself. Humanity now considers itself and its own development, its own life here, or the planet on which it lives, or the universe, or any aspect of creation is the chief end of reason, or reason itself in many cases, rather than God. Having received this wound, having lost original righteousness, which is the ability to recognize God as our chief end, we need to be healed. And that healing comes through the gift of faith, apart from which we cannot see God. With faith, as Paul talks about in his letter to Ephesians, we now have the ability to receive this data or the sight of God, which is our happiness. And so faith in the Christian tradition really is understood as a kind of a sense. It's a faculty. It's an ability to receive data without which we cannot see. And so any Christian, I think, I hope, if you asked, how do you know that you see? It's because we have been given a faculty of faith. Now, the Bible is very, very clear. There's no way to receive this faculty of faith, of sight in God. We don't develop it. We're not like Sherlock Holmes following the clues, although that might be part of it. It's not self-originated. It is an alien gift from God at his good pleasure, in his good will, upon which, receiving that gift, we now see God as he is. And that picture is always the picture, the vision of the crucified Christ. That God entered into this broken creation and swallowed the pain and the evil in such a way that redeemed us. It's the great alchemy. He swallows all of our misery and pain and brings us redemption. That's the vision that faith is allowed to see.
So I kind of think that the question about knowing your belief is true is a bizarre question for a scientist because we don't think that anything is true. I think it should be about the process of trying to narrow down what is true and is not true and following the right process. And that is looking at the evidence and logic. And through that process, can you come to a conclusion of the existence of a God? I mean, from my standpoint, given that I do genomics, the evidence for evolution is vast. We still, in public have arguments about Piltdown and things like that. Right now, we can look and see marriage practices 10,000 years ago in different parts of the world using genomics. Using the same methods that I can show that my brother is my brother, I can show that chimpanzees are our sister taxon. We share 99% of their DNA. But still, many religions believe that evolution did happen, and the evidence for it is incontrovertible. But I think there's also evidence against the major religions. So the main arguments are generally the argument from evil and the argument of divine hiddenness. So why is there evil? Why do millions of people suffer in the world? Why do hundreds of thousands of children in Africa get diseases that are entirely preventable and die? I've worked in the third world with people in extreme poverty. They did nothing for that. They suffer and they die. Animals suffer and they die. And I can't reconcile a God with a world like that. They say it requires free will. Evil is required for free will, but we got rid of smallpox. We still seem to have free will, or we have as much as we ever had. Why did millions of people have to die? So that's something that troubles me. Divine hiddenness. Why don't many of us feel God? Why did it take almost 2,000 years for any word of an Abrahamic God to get to, say, New Zealand, the indigenous peoples there? That's 90% of all the time since Christ. No one knew about him in a large part of the world. That doesn't make sense to me. So the other thing that I find is contradictory to religion is why do people never get revelations about other religions? You can feel faith, but you don't suddenly feel, oh, I got the wrong one. You go, I'm right. The one, or if you're unhappy in your culture, then you go, I don't trust it, and then you have revelations about something else. You never are happy and find revelations about another. That doesn't make sense to me in terms of religion.
All right, on Andrew's point where he said that you can't be a scientist and a person following faith, I am a biochemistry student as well. And you might, for me, our faith, I'm the only Eastern culture also being represented as well. Sikhism came around 500 years ago. It's not 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's not a long time ago. 500 years ago, Sikhism was started. We believed that, written in our holy book is that there's stars upon stars and earths upon earths, much farther than what we have in ourselves. We are small compared to everything else here. We are the smallest things here. And for us, faith is not in believing there is a man above the sky that we pray to and that he will give us what we require. For us, we try to force ourselves. You sit down and meditate. For us, Sikhism is about meditation. It's about self-prayer, self-understanding, and understanding the environment around you. If you've ever meditated, if you ever went in a quiet place, woke up early in the morning and meditated and said the same words. For Sikhism, we say the same word of God. We say the word of God again and again, and then that makes us aware of the environment around us. Makes us aware that the birds are singing and the plants around us. We believe science is part of what we're grown as, but people do evil things. Some people need a code of conduct. What I believe is, for me, truth is what is right. No matter if someone were to speak a lie to you, eventually the truth will come out. That's what the phrase is. No matter, the truth is always true. Whether that's as simple as this, the truth is always true. Whether if science is genomics exists or not, exists, then it's true. Someone's going to find it eventually. I'm not going to say that it does not exist. I'm not going to say there's no God. For us, we believe that personally, as a scientist, I believe in the energy of the universe, energy around us, because in physics, what is it? Everything is energy. And everything goes down to the same point. It breaks down. You die, you go break down. So that is what is true. And if you are aware and you're aware of the situation around you, and you see and you feel this stuff, you sit and pray or you meditate is the best way to pronounce this. This is more of a feeling in your chest, in your heart, in your brain, that you feel what is right. If you do something good, you feel that it's right. You feel good about it. If you steal something, you always have a pang of guilt, unless you're a sociopath, which tends to happen. But that is explained by science as well. So, but that is all a feeling that you have, and what is true is true. That's the main basis. What I believe is true, what you believe is true at the end of the day, if we work together and we see what we feel, what is right. Like, it's hard to explain this in 3 minutes. You could sit here all day, but I'm pretty much finished on that, and you can pretty much make the connections after that. Go ahead.
Okay. I know you're probably wondering why there are two of us here representing Judaism, but as our esteemed colleague here
We're twins.
just said, we're old, and therefore we must be adulpated. So we have to share the responsibilities here. And because I'm one of those really organized people, I'm going to do this in the same fashion that Dinah did on the first question, which is give you the question and tell you our response. So how can we know that our belief is the truth, and why do we believe what we do? It works for me. My beliefs allow me to live my life in a fashion that is designed not just for my personal benefit, but also for the good of mankind. My belief system allows for growth and change and adaptation, while always making every effort to maintain an honorable position. Isn't that what we all claim we want from our leaders? If so, then we should be demonstrating the same. How did we come to the conclusion of my specific belief? Well, this is an easy one. First, of course, is I was born and bred with it. More important is that through study, research, and living these beliefs, I have personally discovered that they are applicable in every aspect of my life, and that it is virtually and vitally essential to my continued personal existence. In my belief system, where does evidence end and the leap of faith begin? I like that question. I don't know how many students came up with that one, but that was brilliant. It doesn't. And if you think I'm looking at these people, you're right. The light's shining in our eyes over there. They are so entwined and enmeshed with one another that there is no differentiation. My faith is based so much on evidence, and evidence has lent so much to the veracity of my faith that they are virtually one and the same.
All right. On to the third. What is the purpose or meaning of human life? Why are you here? Why do we exist? Very tough question. You can see students' example questions up there.
Okay, should I begin?
Shake you on the floor.
Fantastic. What is the purpose or meaning of life? This, for me, was like the billion-dollar question. Like, anyone that has the answer to this deserves $1 billion. Now, from the Islamic faith, interestingly enough, God made it very, very simple and clear what the purpose of life is. If you look at the 51st chapter of the Quran, in it, God mentions that I have not created mankind except for my worship. Now, it's pretty explicit that we were created to serve God. Now, I think where people sort of go astray on this issue is, what does the worship of God actually look like, right? For some people, it may be bowing down and prostrating and remembering the name of God. For other people, it may be, giving charity and helping people in need and standing up for the oppressed, right? So there are different variations of what worship actually looks like. Now, if I was to combine the two, that is what I would say the purpose of life actually is: fulfilling the rights of God and fulfilling the rights of His creation. And when you combine the two, it ultimately looks as the worship of God within of itself. Because God just doesn't want us to be good towards God, but God also wants us to be good towards His creation. And this is manifested by living a philosophy of justice and mercy. Everything we do has to be just, and it has to manifest mercy. If there's no mercy in it, then it is never truly just. And if there's ever an option in life where you have to choose between justice and mercy, then mercy should come before justice. Now, what makes human life valuable? I believe without a shadow of a doubt, out of everything that exists, human life is very, very unique. the way God created us with a system to comprehend things and to digest things and to reflect over things and to critique things and to analyze things. And then on top of that, give us the ability to be spiritually enlightened beings. That is what makes us very, very unique compared to the rest of God's creation. You know, the rest of God's creation is told what to do, and it does it. Human beings were given the choice of what to do, and then those that choose to do and follow a correct path, that's what makes them even more valuable than the rest of the creation. Yet if they choose not to, then they're still at the status quo of the rest of the creation, where they are living their lives with that normal system that God created inside of them. Now, if I was to summarize everything, when we talk about the purpose of life, I would say this is a fundamental question that each and every one of us needs to ask ourselves. Regardless of where we are in our lives right now, why do we truly exist? And each and every one of us should have a satisfying answer and should never lay to rest without finding a conclusion to it. Thank you.
I'm going to fall back on an old 17th century document called the Westminster Confession of Faith, which was produced by some of the finest minds of Oxford and Cambridge in the day. And in that confession, a question is asked, what is the chief end of man? In a kind of catechetical format. And the answer is, the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. And in truth, those two things, the glorification or the exaltation of God and the delight in God are married together. That is, we receive pleasure and happiness when we fix our eyes on that which is altogether lovely and altogether excellent. The supreme excellence, fixing ourselves on that, understanding that, knowing that, pursuing that, brings happiness. It brings pleasure. And so in a sense, in the Christian tradition, there's a very real kind of hedonism there. And I might answer this question by saying the purpose of man is happiness. We want to be happy. And I think many of us here tonight, at the very least, we resonate with that idea. We would like to be happy. I think if we had two buttons in front of us, happiness or misery, most of us would choose happiness just because we want it. And so the Christian idea is that true happiness, true delight, true bliss is the ecstatic vision of God. It's seeing that which exceeds all other things. And the whole universe is a sacrament. It is a sign. All the excellencies that we see, whether it's a really, really fine pint of ale, or whether it's a great brick of cheese, or the two together, or whether it's anything good that we see, that goodness and that beauty, the mind of my brother right here as he studies genomics, that excellence points me to something that is altogether more excellent. And so I follow the signs to that which is signified, which is God. And so what is the purpose of life? It is to know and to understand and to delight in that which is most delightful. And what gives us dignity? What makes life valuable? Well, it's just that. The fact that we are made in God's image, and he calls us to a happiness that is beyond our perception. And that's my short answer.
I think that you should never really ask a philosopher what, the purpose and meaning of life is, because they don't know. If they're asking the question, they don't have an answer. And so you should probably ask like a child, because they know. And I saw a great Calvin and Hobbes on this topic, and was asked, what would you wish for? And Hobbes is just there rolling around in a field. He's like, a really big field just to roll through. And he's, but you could have anything. And he was like, and he's rolling around happy. And it's like, that's kind of the meaning. What do you find meaningful? We've all found meaning in something, right? We've had meaningful times. That's what meaning is. And sometimes you don't feel that, and so you need to go and find something meaningful. It's that easy. We're evolved to find meaning, because all the emo ape ancestors didn't get the ladies. What we find attractive in each other and in life is what we are evolved to have found. My ancestors You know, that they found interesting, caring, witty, creative people attractive. And so do I. That's what meaning is. And I mean, the thing that I find amazing is we are little bits of the universe. That's all that we are. But we've, through natural selection, become parts of the universe that can contemplate that universe that we're part of. And I think that we all find that meaningful. And that's probably basically what we're all seeking in life, is to understand.
All right, for me and Sikhism as well, the main meaning and purpose of life is compassion. Compassion is a tough word to consider as well, but if you consider your whole life through compassion, it can give your life a certain sort of meaning. It's tough to say that to someone, and then they understand that good compassion, oh yeah, if I do this, I do that. And you might also be noticing how most of my answers seem very cyclical. It's because those answers of being truthful, being compassionate, helping people. That is why we are human. Not, like, even if animals can help each other, we have the brains to be aware that others can do this. It's easier to consider yourself to be a caretaker of this world, caretaker of the environment, caretaker of people around you, caretaker of people who can't protect themselves, caretaker of animals as well. If the few times the Sikhs eat meat, they can only kill the animal compassionately and use every little piece of it, as many Aboriginals would say, is the most compassionate way to do it. And whether it be eating meat, even though we don't eat meat all the time, or the ones who consider themselves part of the Khalsa. For us, it means to be together with everyone on earth. It's very, someone might say communist type of mentality, but then it's more like fighting for who has little else. If you see the world right now, like, 5% of the world own 95% of everything, and the rest of 95% starve. What other better way is for that 5% to step down, sit on the ground, equal with each other, equal that we are the same, and end of the day, we are born as children and we die in the grave, or we die as ashes. We come from ashes to ashes. And this is our only one chance that we have in a long time. Even though we might die, Sikhism has a very cyclical thing. It might be another answer later. But for us, we have this chance right now. Why not take advantage of this chance and fight for something? Fight for something that can protect people. Fight for something that can be for the greater good, for the good of everyone around you. Because there's enough to go around. This earth is huge. We barely make up, if all the humans are put in a pile, we'd barely fill up the Great Grand Canyon or something I saw in Mythbusters. Anyways, for us, we are here to make the world a better place. And if you if you live your life thinking that this is a way to make yourself better and make the world around you better, it will become better. And that's it.
Back to me. What makes human life valuable? In and of itself, nothing. It is what we do when given that life that matters. To use the current vernacular, it's what we bring to the table that counts. If we are a benefit to ourselves and to society, then we have some value. If we are a detriment to ourselves and to society, then we need to reconsider. And I'm going to let Dinah take over the other part of these questions.
Why are we here? We're here to pick up the pieces. Our mystics taught that God put all his glory into a vessel. The glory was so great that the vessel shattered and spread its shards, or what we call Shevirat Hekalim, throughout the world. The responsibility of mankind, and if you must be politically correct, womankind and children too, is to collect the shards. We collect them by doing mitzvot, or good deeds. When all those far-flung kelim have been collected, we will have a perfected world. What is our purpose on earth? As Hillel said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what good am I? And if not now, when? Basically, we're here to do good, to repair the world, and to do it today. Please note that modern Judaism lacks an emphasis on the afterlife. We firmly believe that our purpose is not to get into heaven, but to do tikkun olam here on earth. Thus, by repairing the world, we complete the work of creation.
This next question, I don't think any of us here can really speak on from personal experience, but it'll be interesting to see what they say. What happens after death? What is post-death supposed to be like? Are you scared to die? According to your beliefs, what happens to us when we die?
May I begin? Okay. What happens after death? So this is one of those questions that obviously we may not know the reality of until we die. So for a lot of us, this may be just an assumption. For some of us, it is an element of faith. And for others, it may be a combination of the two. Now, from a Muslim's perspective, in terms of what happens after we die, we believe that the human being is composed of two fundamental components, and that is the soul and the body itself. So when the body actually dies, the soul begins its journey to the afterlife. And that journey begins by a journey up to the heavens where one is deemed either to be a good soul or a bad soul. And regardless of the verdict at that time, one is returned back to its body, and at that time is further questioned in terms of what did you believe, where did you get your source of guidance from, and what type of lifestyle did you try to emulate. Now, after those questions, the body waits inside, the soul waits inside of the body until the day of judgment begins. And then on the day of judgment itself, that is when ultimate reckoning takes place, where we are questioned in terms of the blessings that we were given by God and what did we do with them. Those that have satisfiable answers and those that have good deeds are worthy of God's mercy and entered into paradise. And those that were lacking and did not fulfill their purpose of life, as we discussed in the previous question, then those are considered the inhabitants of the hellfire. Now, are you afraid to die? I don't know if anyone would be honest if they said, I'm not afraid to die. Or, I'm not afraid of death. Because there's that element of leaving those that we love and leaving what we prize as possessions, and no one wants that to happen, right? We don't want to part from our parents, from our spouses, from our children, from our friends and family, from anything else that we hold valuable. So that element of fear is always there. But there's also that element of hope that if I've lived a good life, then I definitely have something to look forward to. And that brings the hope aspect of it, which balances out the fear. Now, what can I say about this? That each and every one of us should be asking us our questions, to this question, if I were to die tomorrow, how would I want to live my life? And spend each day living the most fulfilling lives that we can, so that when we do die, we've minimized the regrets to the best of our ability, and that hope should overcome the fear that we may have at that time. Thank you.
I think I can say with a certain amount of confidence that there will be no more marking of papers in the afterlife, for which I'm very thankful, unless there's a purgatory for my fellow Roman Catholics here. Then there just might be millions and millions of years of marking papers. Have any of you read Dante, the Divine Comedy? Yeah, it's not as popular in the university as it used to be. It ought to be very popular. It's a very important poem. And when Dante goes into tries to get into the first circle of hell, he sees a sign on the door into the inferno, and on that sign it says, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." And in the Christian tradition, I think that it's fair to say that the idea of heaven and hell, if we're to understand these two categories, that the idea of hell is one of hopelessness. And I might say with C.S. Lewis that hell is locked from the inside. It is the place where people go who have consistently and decidedly not wanted to love God more than anything else, and have said in their heart of hearts, what I want most of all is not God. And in the end, God will give such people up to their wishes. That is, they shall have not God. Now, if God represents all light and goodness and beauty, then you can begin to imagine what such an existence would be like. And so I think that as we think about heaven and hell, we should be thinking of in terms of hope. Heaven represents hope, the existence of what is most beautiful, most lovely, most good, experienced to the fullest. For here in this life, as the Apostle Paul says, we see through a glass darkly. We're looking through a cloudy mirror. We don't see things straight. And if God truly is the fountain from which all the streams of goodness flow, whether it's beer or cheese or whatnot, then drinking at that fountain in heaven will represent sheer delight and enjoyment. So heaven is the life of hope. Hell is the absence of all that is God, and is really the fruition, or it's what many people, I think, biblically, ultimately will want. They want not God, and so they will be left with themselves forever. And from my perspective, that's not a very happy thought. I'd rather drink at the fountain forever and ever. I'll stop there.
Yes. So I find the concepts of heaven and hell very troubling. I have led a very Christian life in terms of everything apart from believing in God, and I would find it very strange for a God to give me the faculties of reason and then not given me enough evidence and then punished me for that. Isn't that his fault, not mine? Something I find interesting philosophically about this is that there is no actual moment of death. We used to think that, the soul left the body, and there is no moment. And it's been very interesting, the legal progression of when someone is dead. Different organs die at different times. And that's why you can transplant organs. I've actually had to restart someone when I was working at the hospital because their heart stopped. They were dead in many definitions, but the cells were able to be re-energized and they came back. So it's kind of like in The Princess Bride, he's only mostly dead. A really good answer to this question, I thought, was from Carl Sagan. Pretty much everything ever said by Carl Sagan's a good answer. Anyway, when his daughter asked him about his parents who were dead at the time, he said, and sorry, I'm quoting, that there was nothing he would like more in the world to see his mother and father again, but that he had no reason and no evidence to support the idea of an afterlife, and therefore he couldn't give in to temptation. You're alive right this second, and that is an amazing thing. And he goes on. To me, talking about death and leaving people behind and things like that, you're not leaving people behind, you no longer exist. And so talking about death in that way is like talking about a film going, I really liked the first 3 hours of that film, but the 2 weeks of nothing at the end was really It doesn't make sense. It's over. One day we will die and we cease existing. But every day until that day, we're alive. And that's kind of the important part. And so basically, we should entirely focus on this life and making it meaningful for us and everyone around us. And so this is our forever. When we talk about life, it is one eternal moment. And in the words of Brian May, again I'm quoting, but Brian May is also pretty excellent. Who wants to live forever? Who dares to love forever when love must die? But touch my tears with your lips. Touch my world with your fingertips, and we can have forever, and we can love forever. Forever is ours today, because that's all life is.
Yeah, I'm really happy you mentioned how your life is the most important part. It's the most important part that you see. It's for us in Sikhism, we have some aspects of it. Some people consider there's an afterlife or there's a way to come around. We believe in more of a reincarnation type of deal. Like, it's harder to explain than now. But most of our writings, most of our beliefs are based on what is our life right now. It is what do we do, what are our actions, what are we doing right now that is more important than something that we're not aware of. We don't know anyone that's come back after. We can believe so, right? But we haven't never met another person who's come back. But we're aware of the cyclical nature of things. When that man's body died, we burned the body to ashes. That's released all its energy. It's created heat. It's created energy loss. We throw the ashes in the ocean, or we bury the ashes, whatever the family desires, and those ashes are taken up again by the nutrients of the earth, and that earth cyclically uses that again. The plants and nature all comes back again, and maybe one day that plant will be eaten by another baby, and you become part of that person. For us, we don't know when we actually die. We don't know what comes after. But we believe that on our way there, we should at least achieve things. We at least help people, and not rush our way to there, but also make use of the life we have here. Make it worthwhile until the point we die. Because we don't know what's going to happen later. We know what's going to happen now. If I do a certain thing now, a certain action will happen. If I push something, something will push back. But after I die, I'm not sure what happens later. But am I scared to die? Being scared is different. A real fear about something, everyone feels fear. But it's about stepping against a fear that's anything. There's a fear of me getting sick, a fear of me dying. I can do actions that can avoid that. I'm not going to succumb to the fear. I'm not going to consider that death is the way to rush to that point. I'm going to be living as the most famous phrase in Sikhism, and Punjabi as well, is Chardhi Kala, that tomorrow will rise again. Tomorrow comes again. And that mentality of that whatever I do today should benefit tomorrow. Whatever I do right now will benefit right now. And that should just be for the benefit of everything around me. Whether I die, we can think about all we want, but I have never met a person who's come back and tell me, yeah, I used to be a dog when I was before, right? Or I died and I came back to do it again. There's some situations in Sikhism where I can explain it. We also have a way of thinking of like, we will be judged eventually, but nothing is permanent. We don't believe in permanence. We believe in cyclicness. Something will come back, we'll do it again. We will always try to be the best person we can possibly be.
This one, Dina and I are going to split. I get to start with what is post-death supposed to be like. I have no idea. I haven't died yet. It may look like it. But I assure you, I am still here. If I come back, I'll let you know then. Until then, I will live my life as a life. And as the great and wonderful Dr. Apple said, we don't play life with the if deck, so I don't know. Go for it. Oh, yeah. There is, however, a big caveat to that. Absolutely, we most firmly believe that after life, we live on in what we have done here on earth. That is our duty, our responsibility, our obligation, and our greatest legacy.
Am I scared to die? No, not at all. Particularly if I've lived a righteous life according to God's morality. It's absolutely imperative that I remember that as long as I'm alive, I will be living, breathing, and doing. After I'm dead, I'll be memories of what I did, how I treated my family, my community, and my fellow humans. That will be my ultimate destiny. As I've said before, fear of going to heaven or hell is not part of my belief system.
What happens to us when we die? Again, I don't know. No one has ever come back and told me, or anyone I personally know. In Judaism, and this is where we're getting into the broad strokes, as with just about all things Judaic, this is the subject of much debate, and there are as many responses as there are Jews. There are, however, various traditions which we are to adhere to upon death. The most important of these is that we are buried whole, unless our organs are donated for the life of others, and we were buried facing Jerusalem.
Wow, okay. Now for our last question. This is the moment maybe you've been waiting for, maybe not. We'll see. This last question I find actually personally very interesting. PCO's top question. Can our beliefs coexist? I find this very interesting as we have a bunch of religious panelists up here, an atheist. Their views up here, I'm sure will contradict, especially in the news today, the media. There's this huge movement of relativism, subjective truth. Can we know for sure? Can't we all just get along? Do we have to contradict? So I'm personally very excited to hear their responses.
So with this question, the predominant challenge was explaining something, what you believe to be a better way, without being arrogant and condescending. And I believe that the nature of this question could lead to a tone which could sound arrogant and condescending, yet that's not the implied meaning behind it. Now, each and every one of us, the choices that we make, it is upon the presumption we make those choices because we see some sort of benefit in them, and they're not random choices that we make. So now, those choices that we make, which we assume to be better and in our own best interests, we do them because we believe them to be better and superior to the other options that were available. Now, it is with that introduction, can our beliefs coexist? The answer to that is without a shadow of a doubt, for sure. Like I mentioned in my introduction, that the reason why I'm here is to show and to hopefully manifest this belief that just because we have different points of view and diversity in our opinions, it doesn't mean that we can't mutually love, respect, and care for one another. And I believe that's what's most important, that we can differ on, do we believe God exists? Do we believe that is there an afterlife or not? Do we believe that, were we created by God's hands or did we evolve from apes? Regardless of what our views may be, we're still required to love and mutual respect for one another, because what unites us as human beings in the current here and now is more important and more relevant to our coexistence than what we theoretically may believe as a form of creed or dogma. Now, to answer the individual questions, do you consider your beliefs to be more correct or superior to other views? As I mentioned, I believe that is the case, that each and every one of us should be following what we believe is a better choice and a better way of life. Are there similarities between different religions? From Islam, we actually believe it was a conclusion to the Abrahamic faiths, preceded by Judaism and Christianity. So there you will find many similarities, from the name of God to the prophets that we believe in, to the general code of conduct, to even the concept of the afterlife. Can we have multiple religious beliefs? This is the part of, the beauty of living in Canada, that you're free to believe whatever you like. You can pick and choose from each and every religion that you like, or you can pick and choose nothing at all. You're free to choose what you like. Now, we should also be willing to answer to the consequences of those choices, though, right? Every choice has a consequence, so you want to make sure you want to choose the best answer that is available. Do you think that your beliefs are objectively more correct than everyone else's? I believe this was answered previously, that as human beings, we have that self-interest in making the best possible choice, and at the end of the day, we should be choosing those choices that we believe are best for us, not only in this life, but for our afterlife as well. It's important to be long-sighted and in the present here and now as well. You can't ignore one at the expense of the other. So I believe this is the last question, right? We're not going to have an opportunity to conclude or anything after this? Just the Q&A?
Feel free on this question too.
Did you add that in?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can cut me off when my time's up. But I would like to thank all of you for coming out and for giving me an opportunity to present my own personal views. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be with the panelists here, especially our two ladies at the end. They remind me of my grandmother, and it's just no. Let me explain that. I mean that in the most loving, caring, and endearing way. The way we love our grandmothers, that is the sentiment that I feel. And yeah.
Good CYA. Good CYA there.
So let me just conclude by saying, I'd like to thank all of you, and I hope this event has been beneficial to all of you and will lead you to some more important questions that we all need to ask ourselves. And thank you once again. No offense.
Not taken. It was all in good fun.
This is a difficult question. And I think in the words of Peter Abelard, sic et non, it's yes and no. That's the only honest answer that a Christian, I believe, can give to this question, can our beliefs coexist? Yes, they can, because it's essential to the Christian faith that we believe that not all will follow the words of Jesus. Not all will obey his summons to follow him, which is the great call of the Lord, follow me. We know that not everybody will, and it's not up to us to coerce them to believe, something that many professing Christians have lost sight of in the past 2,000 years. There's been an awful lot of coercion, and none of it has been biblically based. And so in light of the fact that we're not called to coerce people to believe, in light of the fact that we believe in, in the words of UBC, in at least in some sense, tuum est, it's yours, it's up to you, you have the choice, that we respect that choice, and we love our Islamic brothers and our atheist brothers and all of our brothers and sisters in this world. And so therefore our beliefs must coexist if we're to love our neighbors. In another sense, it's yes, because we share a lot of the same ideas. Our beliefs coexist because many of us, at least with respect to the second table, believe it's right and good and fitting to do good to our neighbor, to not want their donkey and take it, in the words of the maxim not to covet. We share these things, and we can rejoice in these things together, and we can seek to build a better world by implementing such values. And so yes, in that sense, we can coexist. But in another very definite sense, it's no. And it's no because of the words of Jesus Christ. I am the light of the world, he said. Now, when he said that, he meant exactly what he meant. I am this world's sun. It's an astonishing thing to say for any human being to say. And we believe that Jesus was a human being, as well as being God, very God. I am the light of the world. I am your light. Now, you can imagine your neighbor saying that to you tomorrow. I am this world's sun. Its light, its life comes from me. He also said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the truth. He didn't say, I point the way to the way. He didn't say, that's the way. He said, I am the way, and I'm the truth, and I'm the life. And then he said, no one comes to the Father, that is to ultimate reality and ultimate joy, except by me. That's a very exclusivistic claim. And no confessing Christian can say, in terms of human salvation and finding redemption, that religions can coexist. Christianity is very, very exclusivistic. Now, my hope and trust is that we live in such a world that I may hold such exclusivistic claims and not be shunned and bullied by my brothers and sisters. That our sense of community together can allow for my opinions and Christian opinions as well as others. I do suspect, however, that we are inclusive, except with respect to the exclusive in many cases. And I think that's a mistake. I really do. So I'm here simply to state what Jesus Christ said. He made a very exclusive statement. My life, he said, who I am, is the only doorway for anyone to find ultimate reality. And it's simply on the basis of the fact that he is the one who did die and came back, having defeated death, having defeated sin and all the powers that were against us. And he comes to us now and says, just receive, it's all yours if you will take it. That's the answer, I believe. That's fair and honest for the Christian to say.
I'm not sure that my views, as in I'm representing atheism, I don't think that that's right or better, but I think that the process of deriving our views is the important part. I know many atheists that really have no understanding, and they just arrogantly go, oh, you're so stupid, you're foolish, you believe in fairy tales to religious people, without having any idea. They've never actually contemplated anything, and I do not respect that view. I definitely respect the views of, say, my friend Simon, who's currently training to be a priest. I respect the views of my friend Kim, who has 2 PhDs, one in zoology and one in theology, because they have considered it. And to me, the process of considering things, trying to weigh up evidence, that is better, and that is something that is important, and it's not exclusive to atheism. I think that there is no better view, but there is a good process that we should go through. I think that we can all coexist. And any exclusivity I find difficult. I think it's far better if we don't have in-group, out-group rules. And this is what humans do very well. We go, these are my people, and those other people, they have different rules. With Thomas Jefferson saying, all men are created equal, apart from women and black people. It doesn't make sense. We shouldn't have any of these views that have, this is my group and those other people are different. We should all be treating everyone equally. Generally, and this is a generalization that is not true for all, I think that most religions do have an element of exclusivity, of treating those within it slightly differently to others, and I find that troubling. We should all be treating each other well. But yes, we can coexist, and we do, and I think that that's a wonderful thing, and we should celebrate diversity in culture and views, but we should also always question all of these things in a non-judgmental way.
All right, so there's a lot of main points that you brought up, and then it's very interesting in terms of inclusive and exclusive types of groups. The best way to explain this in terms of Sikhism is if you look at our Mecca, our St. Peter's Chapel, it would be our Golden Temple or Harmandir Sahib. It has 4 doors. It's a whole complex. It has 4 doors or 4 entrances. One's facing north, south, east, and west. And then that means everyone from any direction of the world can come to our place of worship. They step down into the complex of the temple. They step down to become humble, become equal with each other. And when they go into the temple itself, they have to cross over a bridge together as one. This was a whole bit, and then they enter the temple together as a people. It's a tough thing to think that religions could be exclusive, right? Sikhism we're a pretty young religion, saying about 500 years. The Golden Temple was about 300 years ago. All temples have free food, no matter who you are, from where you're from, what your background is, and why you're there. You come into the temple and you can eat. You eat together on the same floor. It's a mentality of that equality is what Sikhism stands for. That you judge a person on their actions, not on their religion, not on their backgrounds. You judge them on what they've done. The best way to do is one of our gurus. He was tortured and killed, protecting another religion that was not his. There were Hindus being forcibly converted in northern India by a man who considered himself to be Islamic, but he was not. He was a tyrant. And he was forcibly converting people and beheading others that were not. And he said to the Hindus that, could you guys, I'm going to convert you guys if you guys don't, I'm going to kill you if you don't convert. That's very against what Islam is. But these Hindus went to one of our gurus and asked, could you help us out somehow? Sikhs were militaristic people, we protected people who were weak. So the head of our religion, our guru, the very head of the religion, went out to the king and said, if you can convert me, you can convert all these Hindus. I am not a Hindu, but I'll stand for them. And he was beheaded. He was tortured, and three of his top 6 were also tortured. One was cut down the center of his head. Another one beheaded, fingers cut off all the way up to his arms. But his son could have gone up and started killing Muslim people all the time, right? Could have been a thing of reaction. Instead, several years down the road, some poor Islamic men came up to him and asked, we don't have somewhere to pray. So the guru put down his own money and his own forces and own soldiers, went and built a masjid, a mosque for the Sikhs. It's called the Guru's Masjid out in Pakistan. For us, we just believe that enlightenment is the top of the mountain, and there's many paths out the mountain. The best thing about it is that we're equal. Whether we can fighting and creating these barriers, it's what creates conflict. Hug the person, give a person a hug, give them something to eat, right? That person's not going to hurt you, right? Someone's angry, you might be hungry, give them something to eat, and then you're not going to be hungry. You're not going to be angry, as is the word I've heard. And that mentality of helping people, being equal, being true equal, is you fight for something, you give something. We are equal. We can consider everything. The color of my skin, the way I look, the way I talk, the way I speak. That can all come into conflict. But it's easier just to ignore all that and consider the person through his actions, through who he is. Doesn't not whether you can be the best. If you're a Muslim man and then you are a good person, you can be a Sikh. Sikhs do not go out and convert people. You are a Sikh if you fight for rights, protect people who need protecting, and give. be compassionate. Those three things make you a Sikh. You do not have to have a beard. You don't have to be a turban. You don't have to be one of the Khalsa. But being one of the Khalsas, the exclusive group of being one of the Khalsa means you have joined the military. You have joined the group of, that's the only inclusive club, is if you've taken the rules down on yourself to fight for the people. If someone were to call for your help, you would lay down your life. That's the only exclusive thing. Other than that, we are all equal. And I'm going to thank everyone else here. Thanks for coming out. This like Sikhism is a pretty small community here in Kelowna as well, and out of Canada as well. But being able to come and talk like this wouldn't be possible 20 years ago when my dad had to cut his hair just so he could have a job to feed his son, his wife, and his two parents that were here while they were living in a basement. The hair he'd been growing since he was a baby. So, thank you very much. That's all I'm trying to say.
Back to us. Do you consider your beliefs to be more correct or superior to others' views? Not on your Nelly. This is just one of the reasons why we do not proselytize. I know deeply, in the very heart of my soul, to the depth of my very being, that if one is good and tolerant and compassionate, that is sufficient. Whatever one's personal religious view or non-religious view, it is just fine with me and God. Are there any similarities between different religions? You betcha. The teachings of most religions are much more similar than disparate. This is equally true of most people. Look around you. What do you see? A lot of different skin colors, hairstyles, clothing choices, ages. What? What do you see? I see a group of people, each with a head, a torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, and it is hoped a few connected gray cells. We are all God's children, whatever God you prefer to see. We have only this one tiny world. I think it's about time we learn to live in it together with at least some modicum of civility, humanity, and peace.
Can we have multiple religious beliefs? Syncretism occurs within religions as well as within individuals. Can we have multiple beliefs? Yes, of course. Often, though, it's a signal of the ignorance of at least one of them. Buddhist teachers, especially the Dalai Lama, often recommend to those who come seeking enlightenment that they return to their own tradition and study it as deeply as they're willing to study Buddhism. Religions are systems designed to work as a whole. Picking and choosing often unwittingly destroys a system of beliefs, values, and rituals that has developed over centuries. It can be done. However, I'd recommend that you proceed with caution.
Do you think that your beliefs are objectively more correct than everyone else's? Well, God bless my newly adopted grandson from Islam down there. See, I knew I'd get back to you sooner or later. Who said this was repetitive. It is the same question as asked earlier. And again, my answer is not on your Nelly. My earlier comments and beliefs have not changed in the last few minutes. If God accepts them, who am I to do elsewise? Now, before we break up, since I'm the last person to speak here, it is Jewish tradition that after we have any sort of a learning session or anything else, we have Kiddush. Kiddush is wine and bread, basically. There can be lots else, but that's all you're getting tonight. And since this is a university and I don't have a liquor license, the fruit of the vine is actually grape juice. You'll just have to suffer and buy your own wine, folks. But the bread is worth waiting for. We will be saying the blessings over the bread and the wine. If you'd like to join us, you're welcome to do so when we break up. If not, just enjoy the bread and wine. I'd like to thank the young ladies and the young gentlemen who poured it so gracefully for me, because we were very short on time. Thank you all for coming and listening to us.
Let's give them a round of applause. They did an awesome job. Thank you. It's not easy to answer those questions in only 3 minutes. Those are very tough questions. some of the things they said have certainly sparked questions in my mind, and I'm sure they have in yours too. So for now, we will open up the floor to you, to the audience, to ask your questions. We have Eric on the side here, and he has a microphone. Please don't shout it out right now. I know some of you guys and girls might be excited to do so, but if we could kind of form a line behind Eric along the side. We have about 20 minutes-ish, if that is acceptable for you guys.
Is there time limit on the answers as well?
Yes, we're going to keep it. So there are rules. You have to only direct your questions at one of the speakers. The other speakers do not have to answer the same question. However, if they do want to answer that question as well, they are able to do so. And we're going to try to do this fast and get a lot of questions in. So, is there anyone that has the first
I'll
question?
walk over to you. If you put up your hand, I'll come over. And
Okay, so do not
That's
line
easier.
up. Lucia up here. Very sorry.
Okay. So, yeah, can I break a small rule and direct a very small question to all the panel?
Just to try to answer, like,
Okay,
only
it will
ask
be a
it to
small one, just a small one. Okay. So the basic question is this, that we hope that in future we are going to detect life on other planets, and right now there are the very good ways to even estimate the existence of a multiverse possibly, which I think I strongly believe which exists. So how would you reconcile, or how does that fit into your worldview if you do find life on other planets?
I'm not
and-
sure if all the speakers up here will know what a multiverse
or
is.
many universe scenario, many parallel universes. So, and definitely we hopefully will find life on other planets, maybe intelligent life, maybe more intelligent than humans.
Can you direct that at one of the speakers?
Randomly.
Would any of you like to
I'll
ask
quickly
that?
answer for me. I already said it earlier that even in our writings 500 years ago, while Galileo, I forgot who it was, I'm not sure if it was Galileo or not, he was prosecuted for saying that the Earth went around the sun. But at that time in Sikhism, we believed that there was stars upon stars and lands upon lands. There's life wherever we see it, right? We could see in the smallest pond there's life, in the farthest sky you can see there's life. And there's the possibility of it not existing. It's tough, right? It's what we do right now is what we do. The actions we involve over there. Like once, it doesn't matter what, if they have their own religion, they have their own religion. As I said before, it's about your actions, not who you are as a person.
Anyone else? Would any of you like to answer that or have a follow-up?
I personally would think it'd be quite exciting to meet an alien myself. I don't see anything biblically that would prevent the reality of there being life outside of Earth. In fact, one of the great lay theologians, C.S. Lewis, who is famous for his Narniad, is less famous for his sci-fi trilogies, The Voyage to Venus, and his voyage to Mars, out of the silent planet. And Lewis certainly had no qualms about delighting in the thought that there was more life than human life, based in the complexity and the expansiveness and the omnipotence and the boundlessness of God. And I think if we're thoughtful about the boundlessness of God, then there's all kinds of room for that kind of speculation, and speculation that remains at this point. But I personally, man, that would be delightful to meet an alien. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Till they eat you.
Till they eat me. Yeah. If it's alien.
Kind, then maybe not.
Yeah, I don't want to meet a something coming out of my stomach necessarily.
Do any of us have a follow-up, or let's take another one from the floor?
I have a question directed to Dr. Veal. So I've also been to a lot of places where people have been suffering really extremely, and I was wondering, when you went over as well, did you find, because what I found was places that I've been to have had the most faith that I've seen ever, and it seemed like faith, whatever their faith was what kept them almost calm in extreme suffering. So I was wondering if you saw that as well, because it seems like they have every right to be angry, they have every right to be like really upset, but it feels like that even in suffering, they're almost like calm and peaceful. And do you think that it might be because of their intense faith?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, faith makes a lot of sense, and I think that the world before modern medicine was a lot scarier and it was a lot more religious because you generally died in childhood. And also the other thing is that so I've mainly been in Southeast Asia, and yeah, that they are not particularly educated about scientific advances there. And therefore there is no alternative to the faith that they were brought up with. That's all they've ever known. So absolutely, and faith, I do not think that faith is not useful in that way. Religion is extremely useful for guiding people through difficult times. The problem is, though, that what is useful is not necessarily what is true.
That was actually the 6th most asked question, human suffering. So it's good that you brought that up. Would any of you others would like to elaborate, or no? Do you have another question?
I think it's me. Question directed to the Jewish ladies. I'm right here. I know the sun's right in your eyes. I'm just confused because I have met some Jewish folks, and so from your perspective, to be Jewish, is that something that is, say, genetic and religious? Like, does a person have to practice a religion, and is it transferred through a bloodline, or is it a way that you see yourselves sort of an ethnic, cultural identity? I've met people that have both, sort of a difference. I don't know if you have to practice or if there's a certain set of things that you need to do, as maybe in Christianity that I understand, or Islam. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Okay, well, you're going to 2 for the price of 1 here. Firstly, it's important to know that Jewishness is an ethnicity. They have now traced the genetic DNA back to a specific scientific beginning. So yes, being Jewish is an ethnic race all of its own. Mostly it means that we're subject to certain diseases that nobody else gets, most of which are deadly. But being Jewish is also a religion, a faith. And you can be a Jew by birth. It is carried on matrilineally. The reason for this is very simple, because Jews have been in many, many situations of war. And as with anyone who is in war, what do soldiers do? They rape and they pillage. And so the reason that Judaism as a religion is carried matrilineally is because we know who your mama is. We're not so sure about your daddy. The second way to become a Jew is by choice. Then you are not part of the ethnicity of Jewishness, but you are a religious Jew. The degree to which you practice it becomes irrelevant. I am considered possibly one of the most irreverent Jews anywhere on the face of the planet. But that's okay. That doesn't negate the fact that I am a Jew, I identify as a Jew, and I feel Jewish to my very core.
Actually, you've covered what I was going to say.
Oh, see, I
Okay.
just preempted her. I'll never live it down, trust me.
We have someone else. Could you please stand?
Sure. Hi, it's not going to do much, I'm short. So this is a question for anyone and everyone, but I'm just wondering, how do you practice forgiveness? What characterizes it? And this is toward the self and others.
Would any of you like to?
So from a Muslim's perspective, we have a fundamental belief that the more you forgive, the more you're forgiven by God. So that motivation to forgive is naturally there. Now, the human element to forgiveness is also a very powerful one as well. That when we hold grudges inside of ourselves, the person we're holding a grudge against usually doesn't know about it. And every time we see them, rather than them feeling any sort of pain or remorse or guilt, we're the ones that actually suffer inside. So we're told that in order to let go of that pain and suffering inside of ourselves, we're actually encouraged even more to forgive. So there's that spiritual element where you earn the forgiveness of God, and then there's the human element of it, whereas the more quicker you are to forgive, the easier it is to let go and to move on to the next process.
Okay. At the end?
When the high holidays occur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, before we can come to Yom Kippur and pray to God to forgive us, we have to forgive the people we feel we've wronged. We have the opportunity to go and say, look, I did such and such. I'm really, really sorry. And we have to, if the person doesn't accept what we've said, we have to at least try 3 times. At that point, we can forgive ourselves. But we can't come to God at any time until we have gone through that process of forgiving other people.
I'll answer for Sikhism as well. For us, it's compassion as well. Compassion and forgiveness is pretty similar if you think about it. But there's some things that you do that cannot be forgiven. You know, you kill someone out of spite, or you hurt someone without compassion. Like if you kill something without compassion, you making them feel pain. That is unforgivable. Like you're spending your entire energy, your being to hurt something for the sake of your own gain or for no gain at all. Now that's unforgivable. But other things, there's nothing much to forgive, right? Someone were to steal, there's a reason he stole for it. He was hungry. He had to steal for his wife, his child. He had to steal some medicine or something. That's why we give. You can if you ask any sick on the streets, if you are hungry, you can always ask them for food. If you ever see me, if some of my friends will know, they come to my house and I'll feed them till they can't walk anymore. And thanks.
You're bad on diets, aren't you?
Oh yeah. And then just it's a mentality of you are equal with me. I feel the pain you feel. So that's what forgiveness is, isn't it? Right? You forgive something for someone for what they did, not for you act on their actions, not on whatever they. Well, I pretty much answered my answer again. Yeah.
Can I also? This is not necessarily the view of all atheists, but personally, I just deny free will. Therefore, that it's not their fault, because they are the product of their environment. And so there is nothing to forgive. It's not their fault. All you can try and do is understand where someone came from and try and help them be better. So there is no blame, because they are not the agent of their actions, is my view.
Well, I'll speak for the Christian community. I felt great fault in myself at many times, and I've been to blame for many things. I've hurt people, and I've, in my own way, even prior to becoming a Christian, which I became at 20, I had a very decisive conversion. I had great rancor towards God, and the basis of Christian forgiveness is that because I have been forgiven freely by God, who am I not to forgive my brother? If I owe the gentleman on my left $1,000 and he freely forgives the debt, and this gentleman owes me $5 and I take him to court and harangue him for it, it demonstrates that I've not really understood what he's done for me. And so for the Christian, knowing that God has forgiven me freely as gift, who am I not to forgive my brother? It demonstrates that I've never really understood God's forgiveness at all. Understanding that God forgives us in Christ sets me free to forgive any debt against me. And in fact, we are commanded via the Lord's Prayer to forgive our brothers and sisters every day, even as the Lord continually forgives us day by day, without any price. We do not earn. I can't earn forgiveness from God. He's perfect, and I'm far from it. He gives it freely as gift. And that's, I think, one of the gracious and winsome truths of the Christian religion, the freeness of forgiveness.
Okay. We have 10 minutes left. Do we have another question here?
Okay. This is for Dr. Veal, and Dr. Vickery, would you answer as well? If there's, I guess in science, if you think of an instinct as something that, like, you're hungry, so you eat, what would the difference between an instinct and a moral be? And with that being said, if we have morals and we know what's right and wrong, and everyone kind of agreed that like we do have an instinct of what's right and wrong, then why do we go against our morals so often, and why do we do so much wrong in this world?
There is a natural tendency to know what is right and wrong, and there are a number of people that would say that there's group selection or multi-level selection, so that the societies where people generally agreed and were good to each other are the ones that prospered, and the ones where everyone fought didn't. And they've shown it with wonderful experiments with chickens, which I probably don't have time to get into, that overall the ones that get on together do better. So that there is selection for that, but there's also selection for doing the best for yourself. And so while we have an understanding of what is right and wrong, you can be put in situations that you don't necessarily do that. And overall, evolutionarily, you're the one that's going to have more grandchildren. So that there's this competition between multi-level selections. What is best overall for you and the society? And we are not perfect. Evolution isn't perfect. We're just part of the process along.
Well, the honest answer again from the Christian perspective is that we're bent. We're bent through sin, and our instincts are out of whack. Precisely because our loss, again going back to Aquinas, forgive me for venturing back hundreds of years, we've lost original righteousness. Our reason is no longer fixed to its chief good, which is God. No longer being able to delight in God more than anything else, we get lots of other things wrong. Once we fix that, our instincts come back into line with what's right. I happen to think that morals have an ontological necessity because they are rooted in the being of God. They're ontologically necessary. But once we miss the terminus, which is in God, our direction is askew. And I start to treat my brothers and my sisters terribly. We're redirected in God alone. So many of us have instincts, but not all of them are right. Instinct is not necessarily a good thing. I've instinctively wanted the next bag of Doritos that I shouldn't eat. Just because I want it doesn't mean that it's good for me or that it's right. So short answer, our instincts are out of whack. Until we get the instinct for God right, nothing's going to be lined up as it should be.
Can I give you a deeply Jewish answer? Is that okay?
I think so, yeah.
If you read the Bible in the book of Genesis, Cain kills Abel. God appears to him and said, "Where's your brother?" Cain says, "How do I know? Am I my brother's keeper?" God says to him, "Sin couches at the door, but you can be its master." Jewishly, we believe that everybody's born with two instincts. The instinct to do good, that's the Yetzer HaTov, and the instinct to do evil, I guess that. And that's the Yetzer Hara. As we grow, we're supposed to strengthen that instinct to do good, but the two of them are always warring inside ourselves. It's up to you to choose which one becomes the stronger.
Another question on the floor? You have one?
Hi, this is a question for Dr. Wheel. I'm very interested to hearing what everyone has to say, but I know I have to pick one speaker, and your answers are the most new to me, which is why I'm addressing it to you. So previously you said that you may have an issue with the existence of a God while people are suffering or dying in the world. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So and first of all, sorry, I've been standing here 3 minutes trying to figure out how to coherently line up this train of thought. So forgive me if I stumble a bit.
Welcome to our life.
Yeah. You were also talking about good and bad, something inherent that we have. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
But we also don't have any choice involved in the matter, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so it's a sort of
Okay.
a cause and effect thing
Yeah.
where we've
Yeah.
gotten to this point where
Yeah.
there's this good and bad, but nobody really chose how we got to here.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're sitting here and there's this good and bad and we had no say in what it is, and then we can imagine maybe there's a God, but people are dying and suffering, suffering and dying actually in that order, then from this causal chain of events where we got to this feeling that this is bad, and then under that assumption, my question finally is, do you, under your current state, do you have an issue with a God existing and then people dying, period? As in not being immortal?
My problem is not so much with death, but with suffering. And there is great suffering in the world. And we all are very lucky to live in a country that has reasonable healthcare. It's not the best, but it's reasonable. And we don't see suffering every day. But there is great suffering out there. Great suffering of innocent people. Great suffering of animals. And I don't see why that would happen if God cares, if there was a God or gods, and it cared about us. Maybe there is one that would just like press the button, okay, universe started, and doesn't care about us. But why? Why millions and millions of children suffer for their entire lives and die? And they're not morally improved, they're not, there is no reason for that. It just happens. And to me, that doesn't make sense with the major religions because it says that God cares about us. And still, there is AIDS. There are worms in Africa that will burrow into your eyes and make hundreds of thousands of children blind. Why?
I can help, but yeah, well, on that point as well. Being the only Eastern religion, we also have a slight difference. Also not a major religion as well. We're the 5th largest religion, but we're not well known. But for us, it's more about the actions of our people. It's more, as I said before, and I keep saying again, it's between your actions what's happening, right? And as I said earlier as well, that 95% of the world is owned by 5% of the population, whether you look at economics or anything. And that this life that we've created for ourselves, we can improve. If we have to take ourselves into that point. It's not God's duty for him to like tell me that now I'm going to die because I didn't do something, right? And then it's not my fault. But that's a weird thought, but still. It's more on the lines of that, the actions, the reason why there's people starving in certain places is that people take what they don't need and they hoard those things and then they take it from people who need it. And that's why we act in a way that we can help those people. We step out of our line. That's our main commandments, as you can say, is that to help those people that have nothing to live for, that are dying, that are starving out there. That's how you become a true Sikh. That's how you become a good person. It's not through prayer all the time. Prayer or meditation is a way to be aware of these things. But your actions, once you're aware of someone starving out there, that your actions lead you to your newfound thought about this would lead you to actions that can help that person that's starving. That we see the whole human race as one. That's what's written in our writings as well. That the whole human race is one. We have one God. Our first writing is Ik Oomkar, which means one God. That you might have a consider of a God, you might have a consider of the God, but we are all the same. And the best way to work out the problems is to work together and help those that need helping. Because we have more than we need, right? I'm sitting here, I'm in front of all you guys. They're giving, like, I get free food at the after too, right? I'm just gotta talk. And there's kids out there that have nothing to eat for weeks on end. But I feel that, and I try to work at making awareness of that. One day I want to become a doctor so I can help those people, right? That's the mentality that you bring up in your life, right? That's what religion is supposed to mean for you, right? It's supposed to lead you in a way to like help the people that can't help themselves. It's not that, oh, they're poor over there, so they can't see God. The reason why they're poor is because they didn't see God. It's that I can work in a way to help those people. Sorry,
I'll just say one thing. I think that the whole idea of suffering, since that we're on that topic, is an important cue. I don't think that any of us feel like suffering's our natural habitat. That is, if suffering has in it, I think it'd be hard to argue otherwise. If suffering has been our lot as humans, or as creatures, or as earthlings, however it is we're to understand this, from the beginning until now, that suffering has always been around us, we've always been part of our cycle, that it would seem to us as our natural habitat, and we wouldn't revolt against it. I don't think that the fish feels wet. I think that it understands in some way that it is in its natural habitat. The water is natural to it. If suffering is our water, why is it that so many of us, feel this revolting rejection of it? Does not seem natural to us. I think very strongly that instinctively, talking about instincts, we are all reaching back to something, some place, some time, and we know instinctively that suffering is not meant for us.
I would like to address this in a slightly different manner. This is not from a Jewish perspective or anything else. Why is it that the question arises regularly, how come there is suffering if God is good? How does God allow this? I would like to turn that question around and say, why is it we do not say, how is there so much good in this world? Why can we not say that God is somehow responsible for some of that as well? Why is it that we as mankind look at the negative? Why do we see only the evil? Why can we not also say that if God is in fact responsible for that suffering, is not God also responsible for the cessation of some of the suffering at least, and for those of us who don't suffer? Just a thought.
I think that if you said that to a child who is suffering from malaria, it wouldn't take it well. Yes, there are wonderful things and there are wonderful sunsets, and there is malaria, and there's smallpox and polio. If you take one, then you take the other, and I find it difficult to then go, oh, well, he gave us lots of good stuff. Sorry, people that live in the third world.
Sorry, Amir. We only have time for one more question.
We have a question here.
First and foremost, I just want to say, I learned a ton that I didn't know, and it was really enlightening. But my question is directed to John Vickery there. One of the things that I've been troubled by, I'm going to try and make this coherent too, is that in the light of overwhelming scientific evidence, I find that a lot of different Christian sects have had to make way for the explanation of evolution via, the divine spark and things like that. If I were a Christian, I'd find it troubling not to question the rest of my faith based on the fact that something so foundational has been proven to be wrong. How do you make acceptance to that and still continue to have faith?
Can I just to clarify your question, can you articulate what you mean by it's been proven wrong? What has been proven wrong?
Sorry, maybe that's not the best word, but that a lot of different faiths and a lot of people of Christian faith have had to at least weigh the fact that evolution is a very powerful argument, that it goes against creation in some ways, right. Against, for example, carbon dating and the age of the world. Yeah. That is something so foundational to the story of your faith, but people have trouble with that inside of the faith. Yeah. How does that not make you question everything else?
I don't think, properly speaking, that evolution disproves in any way a creator. I don't think that's the intention of evolution. I think evolution is trying to understand processes of various types of mechanics of our universe, and especially of our world. I don't think that any honest evolutionary scientist is out to prove by his data that God doesn't exist. I think that the creation story is in Genesis 1 and 2, is a story that is saying certain things about who God is, that God is not to be confused with his creation. In many ways, I think that Genesis 1 and 2 can be seen as a dialectic between the Hebrew culture of its day and other cultures around it. And it's trying to say God is not like this. You think of what God was demonstrated as in the Enuma Elish, God is not to be confused with creation, but God is utterly distinct with his creation. That is, God speaks with, he speaks creation into existence. He doesn't take it out of himself. So I think, to answer very briefly, that how God did that, whether through eons and eons of directing a kind of evolutionary process, whether he did that or did it in another way is immaterial to what the writers of Genesis 1 and 2 are trying to say about who God is. That the universe didn't start by itself, but was brought into existence by a God such as this. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I guess just the thing is given how it was written that the world was a certain amount of years old, and then it's since.
It doesn't say that, though.
Does it not?
No, it doesn't. And I think if you understand the Hebrew idiom of yom, of day, and what the poet was demonstrably not trying to explain scientifically how things happen to be, because the plants come before the sun. The writer, rather, is trying to say something about who God is. He's trying to relay theological truths about the creation and about its creator. And personally, I think it's a mistake to think that Genesis 1 and 2 is a scientific textbook. It's a theological debate, and it's a theological textbook and instruction that is trying to relay information about God. We did not come from ourselves. It wasn't an accident. You are not an accident. You've been purposed in this life. That's its intent. And I don't believe that the theory of evolution really has anything to say about that.
Any other speakers? Okay. Well, can we give these speakers a round of applause? Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. That brings the end to the formal part of tonight. Some of the speakers may or may not stick around, and you are welcome to engage in conversation, stick around, grab some coffee, some tea, and the Jewish ladies have some kiddush for you. So, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure. Have a great rest of your night.